Today on Sugar Spun Run, we'll be making homemade beignets. Hey Sugar Spun Bakers, Sam here, and today I'm bringing you another carefully tested, perfected, and well-researched recipe. Today we are making beignets, and we're making them the New Orleans way. I think you're going to love this recipe, so let's go ahead and get started. We'll start by combining a half cup of water and a half cup of milk, and I'm using whole milk today. I'm just combining these in a large heat-proof measuring cup. I'm going to take this over to the microwave, and I'm going to heat it until it's between 105 and 115 degrees Fahrenheit. Today's recipe is really easy and can be made by hand without a stand mixer needed. So I'm just going to go ahead and pour this into a large mixing bowl. We'll add 2½ teaspoons of active dry yeast, and you're going to need a total of 1/4 cup granulated sugar for this recipe. I'm just going to take a pinch of that and sprinkle it over the yeast. And we'll stir everything together real briefly and let it sit until it's nice and foamy. This should take about 5 to 10 minutes. Remember, if your yeast does not foam, it's probably dead. You're going to have to toss it out and start over. So once this is nice and foamy, we're going to add the rest of our granulated sugar, 3/4 teaspoon of salt, 3 tablespoons of melted unsalted butter. We'll also add 1 large egg, and ideally this should be room temperature. I like to just lightly scramble mine with a fork before I add it into my mixing bowl. And you're going to need a total of 3½ cups of flour, or approximately 3½ cups of flour for today's recipe. Now I'm just going to add about half of that in with all of my other ingredients. We'll reserve the rest for later. And I'm going to stir everything together until it's nice and completely combined. Now with that remaining flour, we're going to gradually add it until we have a dough that's the proper consistency. This is not like many bread doughs. It does not need to be kneaded. We're not going until it's smooth. We're just going to stir until everything's combined and we have a sticky dough that's not too sticky to manage. I want to show you what the texture looks like because that's really important. Now typically I need to use the full 3½ cups of flour, but I always add it slowly just in case. And in your own kitchen, the humidity might be different, you may be at a different elevation, you may need to use slightly less flour or slightly more. So this dough is exactly what I'm looking for here. It's still a little bit wet, and if I touch my fingers to it, some of the dough sticks to my fingers, but it's not a sticky, gloopy mess, and it's not so smooth that none of the dough is coming off of my fingers. We're at the perfect consistency right here with exactly 3½ cups of flour. Now this is going to need to rise in a warm place until it's doubled in size, so I'm just going to transfer this to a clean, large, lightly oiled bowl. I guess it's not clean now that I've oiled it, but you know what I mean. We'll cover this with plastic wrap, and this is just going to need to sit in a warm place until it's doubled. If you have an oven with a proof option, that's a great place to store it. It usually only takes an hour or even less in there. Now once your dough has risen, we're going to want to start heating up our oil that we're going to need to fry it. So I'm going to be using a medium-sized saucepan, and I'm going to fill that about 2 inches deep with oil, and I'm using vegetable oil today. Now your oil temperature can make or break your beignets, so it's really important that you keep this at 375 degrees Fahrenheit. So I really recommend a candy thermometer, otherwise your beignets could end up greasy or underdone in the center. Also make sure your thermometer is not touching the bottom of your pot, otherwise your temperature is obviously not going to be accurate. Now while that's heating up, let's go ahead and roll out our dough. So as you can see, this has puffed up really nicely, so I'm going to transfer it to a generously floured area. It's a sticky dough, so we want to make sure that we have plenty of flour down so that we can manage it and it doesn't stick to our counter. Now you can use your hands or a rolling pin to flatten this to a rectangle that's about 12 inches by 14 inches. Now we'll cut this into squares. The easiest way to do this is just to use a pizza cutter. You can certainly measure if you'd like. Ideally, the squares would be about 2½ inches, but really it doesn't matter. You're just going to be eating them. All right, so let's take these over to our oil, only if it's at the proper temperature. Whenever I'm deep frying anything, I always like to set up a nice little station for easy cleanup. I'll first place down a piece of wax paper, and then I'll line that with a couple of paper towels and then a cooling rack. It makes cleanup so much easier, no messy grease all over your counter. Now I found the easiest way to get this in the oil is to place it in a spider first and then gently lower it into the oil. We're just going to cook this on one side until that's a nice, beautiful golden brown, and then we'll flip it and cook it on the other side. If you notice that your beignets are floating too much, you can use that spider strainer to kind of hold it down a little bit. That way they're cooking all the way through. These are looking beautiful. I hope you're as excited as I am about this. So I'm just gonna take this out with my spider strainer and transfer it to my cooling rack, and then I'll repeat with the rest of my dough. All right, a good beignet needs a very generous coating of powdered sugar, so let's go ahead and generously dust those while they're still nice and warm. And that is how you make perfect, pillowy soft, incredible homemade beignets. I really hope you guys try this recipe out, and if you do, please leave me a comment. I always love hearing from you. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Look at that. You want one, Pen? Dog likes them too.